Hello and welcome back to the Phil Rosenberg Show. I am, of course, Phil Rosenberg. I'm here with Jeremiah Hosea for part two of our discussion. And this, by the way, is a series of discussions, it turns out, between myself and a bunch of people that I seem to know. And we're talking about George Floyd and racism. And I'm making an effort really to do more. I always do lots of talking, and I'm making an effort to do a little bit more listening this time around. It's informational, and I'm trying to inform myself and my audience. So, Jeremiah, I want to thank you for coming back
My
and doing
pleasure.
part two with me. I really do appreciate it. I know sometimes uh, it can be a frustrating thing to be asked so often to explain the same things over and over again that to some folks would seem obvious and apparent. So, I occasionally note a level of frustration when I sometimes talk to folks about racism. It's like, oh, this again? Don't you know already? You know what I mean? I don't know if you've ever.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't assume that people know. I think, what's funny is I don't have a big problem with ignorance, actually. Like, that's a thing of mine, is I think we should just all come to terms with ignorance. We're all pretty ignorant, and it's kind of out of necessity because we just have to ignore most of the world to focus on the part of the world that works for us. No one knows everything, but willful ignorance, I have a problem with. Belligerent ignorance, when you insist on your ignorance, that's the thing that's upsetting to me. But ignorance in and of itself is just kind of a natural thing, and I think we should be patient with each other. Actually, there's a Malcolm X quote to that effect, where he says, "Do not disdain your brother for what he does not know, because remember, you too did not know," or something to that effect. I think it's a really important concept among activists who are becoming increasingly impatient and especially agitated by social media.
All right, so let's go right there right now. Actually, that's a perfect place to. So you just want to do like quick 45 seconds of recap. We're both in New York, so we see it coming down pretty hard. Um, the police are, they're not, I feel like they're not getting the message. Like they're not making, they're not differentiating in many cases between looters and protesters. It seems like if you're out after 8 o'clock, you're breaking the law, and that's what's up.
No, actually, I think it's more devious than that, Philip. They're letting people loot and they're beating up nonviolent protesters. They're attacking, they're
How do you know
assaulting.
that?
This is just what I've seen. I've heard accounts of precisely that.
You've
There's a
seen
lot.
that yourself. You've seen it.
I'm not out on the streets right now. I'm missing being out on the streets, but I have a 2-year-old son and a pregnant wife at the moment, so I can't go charging out there and leaving my family right at this moment. But
You
I'm
are
trying
forgiven.
to be in solidarity in every way that I can.
Yep.
And I'm watching a lot of video of just some really horrific behavior from the police around the country. And the scariest thing about it, I think, that everyone should really, really take note of is the non-reaction of other police when one police officer clearly injures or severely injures someone. They'll continue just marching down
So
the street like
good.
stormtroopers if someone is
You're
literally
putting your finger on a big problem, maybe the problem when it comes to not racism but just police. Is the blue wall of silence is what they call it, right? So I don't have any doubt that there are police who are good people, many police, and there are some who are really bad. But there is a sort of tribal thing that happens amongst police, and let's put it this way: it's such a rare thing for one policeman to give up other policemen, to tell on them, to snitch on them, as it were, that they made a movie about it, Serpico, right? That's so rare that's what happens. So this is a big problem. How to break that blue wall of silence? I really don't know. If you have an
Well, they
idea,
work for us. I think how we break the blue wall of silence is you're fired. You're going
can't
home.
fire every cop though, right?
We should. I mean,
Every
there's
cop.
a lot of things that I would like to do that they would say we can't do. I'm an idealist. I'm a utopian philosopher, if you will, and I dare to go there. What would my imaginary world look like? So I realize we can't just make
But
that
I'm not
happen.
asking. I'm not asking about an imaginary world here. I'm saying what can we do in the real world to make change? This is really a serious problem. Blue wall of silence. One cop commits a crime.
I think there's a long list of things that we could just start brainstorming about. I think any person who's really considered this matter conscientiously could sit down and just off the top of their head start thinking of some things that we should do to change things. And if we added up all of those ideas, I think we'd notice some of the important ones that we agree on that would really make significant structural change into how policing goes. I
So
mean,
am I to gather that you don't have a specific solution on how to bust down
I have a
that?
lot of solutions. Like I said, I mean, first of all,
Let's go. Let's have one.
there shouldn't be military allowed in the police. A lot of people go from a military background and then it seems like a logical job to go into policing. No, two different mindsets. If you served in the armed forces, thank you for your service, but you can't be a police officer because we need a different type of mindset than what you were
Do you
trained in.
think that having military people is one of the big things that brings about the blue wall of silence effect? Is that part of what you're saying there?
Oh, no, I wasn't. That's interesting. I never really particularly thought of that. I wouldn't say that.
Because
But I
if
think
that's not true, I mean,
my main emphasis on the military background thing is treating citizens as combatants as opposed to serving the public. You know, you came from a battlefield where you're looking at a range of combatants compared to, no, this is the community that you serve. And you see a lot of that hostility of like, hey, you're supposed to be participating in and contributing to this community, but there's this sort of off the bat hostility from a lot of these officers who, which another problem, come from remote communities. People from Long Island and various places shouldn't be put in Harlem and the Bronx where
but
they
I
can't
want to,
relate to the
Jeremiah,
community.
I want to steer back to what we are both recognizing that the blue wall of silence is a serious problem, because if we can break that down, then
Can I
when
go
a cop,
back? Can I go back one step and just
I mean, I
introduce?
want to just get an answer to this, if we can. I've
Yes.
been asking that. I asked this question 3 times. It would be, if you would be so kind, if you have a good response.
Let me
How
hear
do
what
we
I'm
break
missing.
through- How do we break through the blue wall of silence? How do we do that?
You know, I think through an overhaul of the police, just saying, hey, you guys don't make the rules in that respect. You can't cover up a bunch of things and lie and abuse people. Like there will be serious consequences for that. You will lose your job. Like one report of one
Increase.
instance like that, we have video up, you're out of here, fired, no benefits if it's abusive. You know, I mean, a lot of these cases, you know, I think it's fascinating how the system has never even acknowledged that the person perhaps is not suitable for policing. Like, you know, I would look at some of these instances and say, well, this is criminal behavior. This would be considered murder. And they could say, oh, no, well, you know, the excuses of the police officer was afraid or whatever the rationality is. And then, well, okay, you were afraid, but now you're fired because you've caused an injury in this community. The community will never recover from. And we can't have people
I
who
think
are.
that's policy, though. I mean, if it's executed correctly, I think we have policy against that. What's happening is we're not getting the policy that's in place executed. So we're not holding the police accountable. The policy is already there. It's already not okay for police to be abusive. We're
Well,
not.
I
Yeah,
mean, the elephant in the room is that the police protect the ruling class. And if you see, like, I'm
and
appalled,
themselves also.
and themselves and each other, but I mean, Governor Cuomo was on the television just a couple days ago saying, well, you know, I don't see any police officers hitting anybody with batons. And well, what are you talking about? There's just overwhelming footage of the police just trampling people and shoving people to the ground. So if the governor is saying that, you know, I interpret that as he's my class enemy because he's showing total disregard for the police just inflicting wanton violence on peaceful
I
protesters.
didn't see that. I heard.
De Blasio, when police
I
officers,
did hear stuff,
the
but
police
Cuomo,
officers,
I heard Cuomo say other things. I heard Cuomo say that the
he
situation.
started out with a slightly better report card than De Blasio and then completely revealed himself within a matter of a couple of days.
Did he?
So, you know, I mean, that's the problem is that the people who would change these policies, they don't particularly mind some of this conduct. And maybe quietly or secretly, that type of conduct might be necessary from their point of view. You know, I think hopefully people are waking up through what's going on now to realizing that there is a real sickness in police culture. There's a
So,
really deep,
I think
deep
there is,
sickness.
but I think that there is something that is very difficult. And so, and this is going to sound like I'm letting the police off. I'm not. I think if you're a policeman, you have an even greater obligation than an ordinary person not to be abusive. Unfortunately, it works the other way. We all see it all the time. And it's not just our police or the police. It's when people are in power, they have the opportunity to be abusive, right? So first of all, you have
And people who wish to be abusive might pursue positions of power. They might
that's
gravitate
also
towards
true. That's also true. And also, there are certain types of abuses that are profitable. And so I don't want to paint, I'm not willing, personally, I'm not willing to say, let's get rid of the police or all police are bad, or even that the majority of police are bad. There is one bad thing in police culture, though, that to me is much worse than all the other things. And I have already mentioned it. It's the blue wall of silence. It's not what, because if you have 10% of your department let's say that's abusive, right? That's a huge amount of people. But the other 90% are not saying anything.
Okay.
That's
okay, but hold on. I agree with you, but let's try to penetrate this a little bit further here, right?
okay.
Is it quite right to say blue wall of silence in the sense that is that really the problem when some of these abuses are being committed in broad daylight in front of the protesters?
I'm not saying it's
we're not talking about hiding evidence and that kind of thing.
I'm not saying that's what the problem. I'm not really saying that's what the problem is. I'm saying that is how you solve the problem of one of the ways. But
hold on a second, though. What I'm saying is, I'm watching footage from all around the country, particularly being featured on the Jimmy Dore show. I don't know if you're hip to Jimmy Dore, but I'm a big fan of his, and I'm particularly a big fan of his in this moment. And he's been covering the abuses of police all around the country.
100% okay to talk about other talk show hosts on my show.
Well, hey, it's good company. Jimmy Dore, he's doing the good thing right now. So as are you, Philip Rosenberg. So the point is he's showing a police officer shoving a woman to the ground, who falls to the ground, hits her head, falls unconscious. Turns out she has seizures in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. The police just kept marching down the street. The guy who shoved her, he didn't say, whoa, I hurt somebody there. I didn't mean to shove you that bad. He didn't care one damn bit, and none of the people around him. So my question is, where was the good apple? I keep hearing about these good cops. Where was the good apple?
I did not see this footage.
He showed another example in Indiana.
Particular footage, so I can't.
He showed another example of a person in Indiana who he was standing there with his SWAT team. I don't know what you call the various police units, but they had their shields and they were heavily guarded and armed with a totally nonviolent group.
If they have shields, they're at least whatever they are. They have rights.
And out of mischief, he just mischievous sort of mentality. It seemed he just tossed a canister of tear gas, I guess, or a smoke bomb into the crowd, caused a huge frenzy. Children were there. None of the other police said, what are you doing? This is just how they behave. Again, where was the good apple? And I'm seeing all of these images around the country that makes me say, where was the good apple? And blue wall of silence is a big problem. But that's not blue wall of silence. That's how they're behaving.
No, that is part of it. Actually, that you're really describing the blue wall of silence. Your narrative, part of your story is.
Well, I think it's a little bit different. I'm trying to make a distinction. To me, blue wall of silence is more, I'm not going to rat out my fellow cop. I'm not going to report you for things that no one saw.
We're also not going to take action.
We all behave like this. We all behave in this aggressive, militant manner.
But it's not just that, Jeremiah. The blue wall of silence is, I think, also just being supportive of other policemen when they, like, for example, if a cop does something wrong and there's an investigation, you're going to if you're asked questions, you're going to support the policeman's story, whatever it is. So that's not just being silent, right? That's proactively, that's telling a lie, right? Maybe it's illegal, I'm not sure exactly, but the camaraderie, the fraternity that policemen share, even in the face of other cops doing horribly criminal stuff, is, I think, a big part of this issue, right? Where are the police that are willing to
I guess
say,
what I'm trying to add, without contradicting your framework of what the blue wall of silence is, I'm going to just add that in addition to the blue wall of silence, we have a problem of police who have a generally wrong disposition towards the public, and particularly in certain communities where it's an outrageously bad disposition and
let's talk about solutions.
Antagonism.
I agree with you. Let's talk about solutions.
I
have one solution about the policing in the neighborhood thing that is not new. It's not unique, but it makes sense. But I'm wondering what you think. I'm here to ask you questions.
I think there's a lot of solutions. Like I said, I don't really think there should be a police department in the sense that we have it now. I mean,
What does that mean?
in fairness to the police, as critical as I am of the police, and as much disdain as I have for what they represent at this moment, let's also just pause and recognize the sort of absurd position that police are in right now. And in general, their job is to supposedly remove the harmful people from society. It's a little bit of an unrealistic expectation. So everybody's going to go about their merry business and go to school and go to work and shop and do this and that, and the police will go and remove all the psychotics and the sociopaths. So if somebody wants to take out a gun and create a deadly scene,
that's their job.
These heroic people to
that's what
shield.
they're getting paid for. What's wrong with that? I don't see the
I just think it's an unrealistic concept in general, and I think
it's unrealistic.
What I'm getting
they'll
at,
always be successful, but
what I'm getting at is that I think safety needs to start being a community issue. I think the people have to start addressing some level of responsibility themselves for their own safety, the safety
so more
of their
citizen
household.
arrests, that kind of thing.
I think that would be great. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, we don't even know the law. I don't know. Can I do a citizen's arrest? Can I citizen's arrest a cop? I don't think so.
Try. You might not have a lot of fun doing that.
Right. But I think we need to start.
Really horrible thing to laugh at.
I think there needs to be a community security, community watch, what have you. I think
instead of the police. You're saying instead of the police.
In direct conjunction with police. If we're going to not just say, okay, well, we're ending the police precincts of America, right now and here.
That often exists already in New York, neighborhood watches.
No, I don't just mean neighborhood watch, but I mean to take that concept a step further and to have a direct one-to-one relationship between these on-the-ground groups in the community and the various precincts.
I don't understand.
For example, let me give you an example of the type of thing that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. In Detroit, there was a rapist at large who was torturing his victims with a blowtorch. And I said, oh my God. I mean, it's just one of these horrific things. It just bothered me, for the entire day after I read it. And they said that he tried to attack a woman in a gas station and she was able to get away. And he got in his kind of beaten up brown car and drove off and escaped, fled the scene of the crime. And I thought, somebody knows whose damn car that is. That everybody in Detroit, all the relevant communities, we have Twitter, we have Facebook, we're sending around all this irrelevant information. Everyone in the community should know what is happening in a given radius. Like, for example, my wife has the Citizen app on her phone, and that notifies you of police alerts.
So the community, it's kind of vague. I mean, how would you, let's take your example. So, okay, so what finally happened to this guy, by the way? They catch him, they gave him a beat down?
I don't know if he was ever caught, honestly. I should go look it up now, come to think of it.
Yeah.
Was that disgusting person ever caught? But my point is, the city of Detroit should know, whose car is that? Just like we tweet things out, I feel like the relevant crime information and the things that would keep us safe are not being disseminated properly.
I have an idea.
The community is not well informed in terms of its own safety.
I have an idea in terms of a solution. Tell me what you think of this. What if it were mandatory that a police precinct was like within a range of, let's say, 10% representative of the demographic that they're policing? So if they're, for example, policing in a Caribbean neighborhood or African American neighborhood or Chinese American or whatever, there has to be some parity between who lives there and you can't just have, like, for example, I mean, here what we're trying to avoid right now, right, is a bunch of white people.
You know what? That's what I alluded to earlier, but I think even better, just police your own neighborhood. Wake up in the morning, walk down the block, and you make sure you go shake hands with the baker, the butcher, the barber, you know everybody in the neighborhood, and everybody knows exactly who you
What do
are.
you
And
do when
everybody will
somebody
also
breaks into a
protect
house?
you for that reason.
Okay, what do you do when someone breaks into a house and does a crime? Then they sneak in, they commit a crime, they steal whatever, they leave. They don't get caught. What happens then? What do you do?
I don't know. I mean, in terms of from one
They call the
jurisdiction
police,
to
I think,
another.
right?
What's
I
that?
mean, shouldn't the answer be call the police? And shouldn't people not be afraid
I
to
mean,
do
look,
that?
you know, as a black person in America, I for one will do everything in my power to not call the police because I'm
That's,
fully aware that I could be creating just a harmful interaction for myself.
but what
And
if you
that's
knew there was
happened
a
over and over and
70%
over.
chance? What if you knew there was a 70% chance that when you call the police and another African American or two African American people are going to show up? Or at least one. If there's two, maybe it's mandatory that at least one person in a neighborhood that's predominantly African American, maybe mandatory that in a partner, at least one African American shows up to answer that call, and maybe two. Would you
Well, yeah,
feel
yeah, we're in
better?
agreement about that. I mean, I think that would be a good step in the right direction. But like I said, I think go all the way there. Wake up in the morning and police your own neighborhood. You
Okay,
wake
but would you call the police then if you knew that was what I just described was the case? Would you still, do you think the cops not just being white is going to make you
I
feel?
hope that would help. It won't help enough because, as we know, there were black people who collaborated with apartheid South Africa. There were Jews who collaborated with the Nazis. Your skin color
Yeah,
does not make you politically
a
conscious.
little bit, I guess. I mean, capos, yeah, it's a sort of collaboration.
I mean, look,
A lot of pressure.
there's always people who have no political consciousness whatsoever who are perfectly willing to inflict harm on their own community.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the fact of
So,
the matter is, though, before we even get in, we kind of jumped ahead because I don't want to.
I mean, I want to talk about solutions because we only have a couple minutes left. Is the
Right.
truth?
I mean, there are solutions, and that's a very, you know, that's something I think we should all contribute to. I mean, I think there should be more community input on how we are policed and any number of policy changes that need to happen. But I think, you know,
And we're
we've
not
gotten
getting at the
ahead of
root of it.
ourselves in this conversation just in not fully addressing the fact that there's a total crisis in legitimacy of the police at this point in this country. I mean, I think they're completely out of control. I don't think people are saying, oh, well, there's a few bad apples. No, I think there's a barrel of rotten apples here. And I'm sorry to say that. I've known police officers who are individually good people. It's just not nearly enough. Their individual goodness and niceness on a day-to-day basis really has nothing to do with the fact that they are part of, you know, an occupying army in some cases. I mean, if you go over here to the projects and see how the police post up in and around the projects, they're functioning like an occupying army in some cases. They're preying on the black community. So, I mean, I think that some people might be startled by hearing me say this, but I've said it and I'll say it again. As a person of African descent, I do not consider myself a citizen in this country. I don't consider myself a citizen for just very practical reasons, for the simple fact that if I were murdered by the police and on no just grounds, on no basis whatsoever, that murderer would probably get away with that murder. I'm pretty sure.
Same
Track
is true
record
for me.
said,
If I were murdered, it would be the same story. Actually, the difference would be that I'm less likely to be murdered in the first place. But
okay,
I don't
maybe
think
so.
me being white helps the story come out. The problem
I
again
don't.
goes
Yeah, I don't
back.
know. That's an interesting question, and that's, you know, that's another thing is that a lot of people I've seen they will respond with, "Well, police kill white people too."
Not what I'm
That,
saying. I'm not saying that.
no,
I'm
I know you're
saying that
not saying that.
if
I'm
I
not
get
saying.
killed, they're not going to be like, "Oh,
No,
we
no, no.
killed a white
I'm not.
person. We better
I'm
kill
not
the crew."
assigning that to you whatsoever. I'm
No,
totally
no.
clear on what you just said. I'm just saying I want to make the point that people have come at me recently in my social media arguments saying, "Well, police kill white people also." That doesn't make me feel any better.
Yeah.
I don't. Oh, great! They killed white folk. Never mind. Everybody go home. I'm horrified by that too. However, there's a particular evil. I don't know what to say other than evil, and this is what people need to reckon with. And I see a lot of people avoiding this. Is if you compile the cases that we've witnessed in our lifetimes, and there's many other hideous and heinous cases that have not gotten the same level of publicity. But if we look at some of the cases that got publicity in our lifetime, they have a level of just morbid absurdity to them. And I mean, I wonder, and maybe there are counter examples, but I've asked people, and I have never gotten an answer. Who is the white Eleanor Bumpers? Did a SWAT team just blow a an 82-year-old white woman to bits? Who is the white Amadou Diallo? Like, when was there a bunch of black cops who shot 41 times at like a European immigrant, and they shot him, 19 times with bullets in the bottom of his feet? Who is the?
Is that what you would need? I mean, is that what you would need? I don't. So look, let's.
No, no, no.
If you're really asking
what
the
I'm trying
question,
to say, what I'm trying
if
to say
you're
is
really
that
asking the
people are
question,
denying the racial component
I'm
and
not.
not realizing there's a
think
particular hatred against black people.
Who's doing that? Who's doing that?
The police in these cases, or George Zimmerman, who wasn't even a police officer. Like, yeah, who was the white Trayvon Martin?
Well, let's put it this way: we're on the Phil Rosenberg show. Excuse me, we're on the Phil Rosenberg show here. There's no one here denying that the police are racist in the same sense that the public is racist. Not every policeman, not everyone in the public, but there is racism in our society. It's more than just sometimes. It's more than just now and then. And the problem is when you marry racism or any type of ism like that to someone with power, you end up with abuse. That is the formula for abuse. So let me give you the last word. I got to run, unfortunately. I have another interview to do in just a couple minutes, but I want to give you the last word, please, Jeremiah. Please.
Yeah, I mean, if you look into the history of the police, they were originally the slave patrol. So it's kind of hard to clean up an institution that's rooted in that kind of thing. And, I just hope that everybody can do their best to engage in discussion and then hopefully engage in constructive action to join local organizations and create media such as this to help create more discussion. But this really has to change. I mean, this will tear this country apart if we don't understand that. If what's happened in the past week hasn't illustrated that, please be clear, this country will actually decay at a much faster rate than it was even originally on course to do on account of not reconciling these, I don't want to say ancient, but deep-rooted issues in the fabric.
That's the correct way to put it, ancient and primitive, because really racism, if anyone had asked me, if you were interviewing me and you just said, Phil, what is racism? I would say racism is the response, a very primitive human response to the need to be part of a tribe and a group, which historically speaking throughout human history helps ensure that your genetic material carries forward.
Well, we always have to consider, though, the concept that was illustrated in the book, the invention of the white race. I think that is an important thing to keep in mind, and maybe a good point to end on and to think about is that the racial constructs that we walk around with in America are not per se ancient. It was the result of the political instrument of racism. And there was the invention of this white race, which was not, in fact, the way people perceived different ethnicities and the differences between people historically. I don't think that's necessarily
controversial.
The notion of this being older.
That is indeed a controversial statement, and that's a perfect place to end things. And we will do part 3. I'm sure you'll be down for it. I'm down for it.
I'm ready for it, Philip. Thanks for the good work, and I'll see you
pleasure,
my friend.
Folks, I want to thank you very much for tuning in, and we will have part 3 coming down pretty soon. You
guys go to jeremiahhosea.com too.
Oh, that's right, sir. Go ahead, plug. Yes.
I just wanted to say, I'm taking the time to do this interview, so I just want the lovely people who might have taken some time to listen to now take the time to go to jeremiahhosea.com and check out some of my music. I am a movement artist.
Right on.
I've been performing at benefit concerts around these issues for many, many years, and I will continue to do so.
And what about Earth Driver?
Earth Driver is an ongoing thing. Please go to earthdriver.org. We've done benefits against police brutality and for political prisoners and for every kind of thing. And we're going to get back into it. I've been talking with members of the gang, and we want to act.
And what if people want to learn how to play chess and talk to you about that?
Oh, yeah, please. Well, look me up on Facebook, jeremiahhosea.com. I'm working on my chess website.
Okay. I'm not done yet. What if people want to talk to you about how to learn martial arts?
You know what? That's Ying Jiao Pai. I'm not a teacher, but all this stuff, contact me at jeremiahhosea@gmail.com, and that link is also at
So
jeremiahhosea.com.
this was my asking these questions was my way of saying,
So
look
yeah,
what a well-rounded teacher you are.
well, thank you, my friend. I'm not a martial arts teacher though. Sometimes I'm a substitute teacher, but I'm a humble hobbyist and practitioner of the martial
Got
arts.
it.
But
Got it.
the chess teaching, yes, is in full effect. So I might be subbing off some lessons to you soon, Phil. I'm getting.
Can't hardly wait for that. All right. Thank you again, Jeremiah. Have a wonderful evening, and I will talk to you very soon.
Yes, my friend.
All right.